Moriden Athluan.
The champion of Kinneret. Moriden showed the beauty of nature by finding renewal for the great and glorious Gildergreen of Whiterun, providing a place of worship for all manner of men and mer.
The champion of Daebella, the only man to enter the most sacred places of the temple in Markat and live. He, who found out the Daebellian symbol and returned her to the temple, so that all could hear the will of the great goddess.
The messenger of Mara, whose small words and influence sparked two of the greatest love stories of all time in Skyrim.
Moriden was at the height of his goodly deeds when word reached him of a new threat to Skyrim and its people.
Like the mighty champion of the people he had become, he looked up to the role of the people's champion once again and set off to destroy the vampire threat.
Come closer and hear the story of how he destroyed one of the oldest threats to
Still
man
searching
and
for stories about me, I see. I hate to disappoint you, but this portion of my story, you won't find a single bard who knows what he's talking about. That's fine now. We have time, my friend. I can tell it far better than they can, as they tell it for entertainment, not because it is truth. Because the truth is not what the bards would have you believe. "28 Frostfall, 4th Era, 201. I do not care for the idea that a Daedric Lord, even one that we consider to be one of our own ancestors, is looking into my future. My fate, my actions, are mine to decide, not something to be decided at the dawn of the world. The words of Lord Azura, however, make it plain that she, at least, believes otherwise. There are many tales about what happens to those who try to defy fate, and I can hope that mine will not be added to theirs. On waking, I decided the best course was to ignore her words, and do what I feel I must. To that end, I will be making my way towards Dawnstar and then south to Dim Hollow Crypt as I had originally planned. I will not be taking the main road, however. As I've ridden, I've also been doing some reading and studying, and I think that those who seek the Crusaders' armor have missed something. The main pieces of the armor, the ones that are most impressive, are not the first thing to seek. The Ring of Amil is. That ring is the key to being able to get those other pieces, if I read this aright, and that ring is somewhere in the north of Skyrim. The one area where few dare to go for fear of freezing to death. That is where I will search. The Glacial Plains. Though I thought it unlikely that there would be any obvious marker to call attention to the ring's location, I also decided that, on these desolate ice sheets, anything that was so marked would be worthy of at least cursory investigation. Such was the case as I climbed a small peak of ice and found an outdoor burial site, Though several of the Draugr that seemed to be endemic to this region rose to contest my arrival, none were around long enough to argue with me. All of them, last I saw, were learning how to fly. I gave them some initial assistance, shouting them off the edges of the rise. I doubt they learned the trick of it before they crashed into the ground. My reward for such effort was another of the standing stones, this one dedicated to the tower. I could feel the power of the stone as I had the others, but chose not to make use of it. I've been quite satisfied with what the ritual had been doing for me. I turned away and continued my search for the ring's final resting place. It was, however, as I turned away that a motion caught my attention. Looking to the south, over the edge of the piece of glacier that I stood upon, I strained my eyes against the bright glare of the ice. After a moment, I found it again, a flag of some kind in the distance atop another sheet of ice. I could not make out the sigil on the flag, either because it was too faded, I was too distant, or possibly because of the glare, but I carefully marked its position. There should not be anything like that out here, I thought to myself, and this seemed like the best course to follow. The flag became my beacon as I continued my search, and eventually I found a way up onto the ice. At the top, half buried in the snow, was an ancient skeleton holding its banner aloft. Though the sigil is long since sun-faded to the point it cannot be made out, the contents of the lockbox nearby told me what it should have been. The Order of the Nine. This skeleton is all that remains of Sir Amiel of the Order, and Keeper of the Ring. Their method of safeguarding the armor of the Crusader was ingenious, each chest blessed by a particular divine and locked against anyone who did not carry that divine's blessing. I do wonder, however, how they got the divines to even bother granting their help. However, because they anticipated a time when they would retrieve all of the pieces, some of which were scattered to very remote areas where gaining such blessings would be difficult at best, they created the ring to allow anyone who possessed it to gain entry to those chests without the blessing required. And now it is in my possession. I have also gleaned the locations of the other pieces, or think I have anyhow, which means that with a little time and effort I will be able to reassemble the armor of the Crusader for the first time since, well, forever. And won't that make for an impressive display at the museum? To that end, one of the pieces, the helm, is closer to me than Dimhollow. That, then, became my next destination. The helm of the Crusader, if I've interpreted what the books and notes tell me, is located in the Pale, in a small mountain pass that bypasses Fort Dunstad. Few have reason to do so until the bandit outbreak and the Civil War, so apart from a small number, no one would think of this pass when researching the helm. Further, there is a cave, a very bleak-looking one, on its eastern side. This cave, Duskglow Crevice, is where I believe the helm to be at. I had to work my way around some smaller bandit camps to get to it, as well as a Thalmor patrol who, if they keep going in the direction they were when last I saw them, will be getting those bandits' attention in short order. As it sat before me, before I entered, I could only think to myself that this cave is as out of the way and dingy-looking as a cave as I've ever seen. Perfect for hiding something of great worth. Of course, that could be said of most any cave, but I feel good about this one. My good feeling about the cave ended fairly quickly. A pair of bandits near the entrance were talking about the place being inhabited by Falmer, which didn't make me feel better about the cave, though killing them both did help a little bit. When I pushed on slightly further and saw the number of the fallen Mer and one of their pets, a creature I'd never seen before and hoped to never see up close while it's alive, I felt even worse. This is still doable, though. They are blind, and I've gotten very good at moving in silence. As long as I don't get sloppy, I should be able to cope with this unforeseen development. The chest I sought was not hard to identify. Its construction told me all that I needed. White stone, though darkened with age, and red trim, more ornate than any chest I've seen in cave or ruin. As I expected, it refused to open until I put the ring of Amiel on my hand, and then it opened smoother and easier than even some newer chests I've seen. Inside was a helm of ancient make and design, and even touching the helm lightly, I could feel the power imbued within it. I also recognized the feel of it. I had spent some time doing work for the goddess in recent weeks, and though I still maintain she hasn't taken an active interest in anything here on Nirn in quite some time, this piece of armor had clearly been touched by Dibella. That found it was time to find my way back out of the cave, though because of the terrain, forward was the only real way I had to go. The cave system wasn't as deep as I had feared, though I have certainly developed a very healthy fear of the Falmer and their insect-like pets. There were several of these last in this cave, and though their size is intimidating enough, the poison they spit across the room with almost stunning accuracy is even more so. Stealth, however, was certainly the way to deal with them, allowing me to deliver death blows almost immediately. In time, I found my way to the opposite side of the same room I'd first seen the Falmer in, making it easy to return to the wilderness of Skyrim, which was suddenly even more appealing than I'd ever believed it would be. The entry to Dim Hollow Crypt is supposed to be in the mountains above the main road between Dawnstar and Morthal, an area that is only easily accessible from the Fort Dunstad side of the mountain. I climbed up into the mountains and, in the process, ended up finding a band of brigands who had set up camp around the Lordstone, which, like the tower before it, I turned my back on. It did, however, occur to me that getting good descriptions and drawings of these as I find them might be a good idea. Not many in Skyrim get an opportunity to see these parts of their history, so making a good replica of them as a display at the museum would be something that might attract attention. A decent sketch made, I continued to look for the entry to the crypt. And my horse. He'd run off during the fighting like a smart animal should, but hadn't made itself immediately obvious. The crypt, as it turned out, was almost directly below the Lordstone. I almost missed the entry. Indeed, it appears more a cave than an actual crypt. The entry had been recently widened using tools of some kind, likely the Vigilance that Isran mentioned had been poking in here before the fall of the Hall of the Vigilance. If the vampires are looking for this place, or something in it, then there is only one way to deal with this site. Careful, thoughtful, and quiet movements and stealth. A vampire on its own can be very powerful. Vampires in a group are even more so. Moving quickly but silently through the entrance, I began looking for Tolan, the vigilant who promised to meet me here. I knew his fate long before I found his body, though. Two vampires were conversing as I entered, and their words told Tolan's tale. How he had entered the crypt alone and fought valiantly, destroying two vampires before falling himself. Oh, the fool. Together we could have taken them. I told him to stay back at the fort. But that is now in the past, much as Tolan himself now is. The two vampires who had been speaking joined him in death shortly after, so at least he has been avenged. And perhaps more importantly, his story is confirmed. The vampires are definitely interested in this place, though why, they didn't say. I did, however, get two names. Lokil, the vampire in charge of this expedition, and Harken, their master. This is no small group of vampires banded together for a quick purpose. This speaks of something far larger, far more organized. far more deadly. Deadly enough that I wonder, does the Dawn God actually have a chance of victory against it? I and the Dawn God are in way over our head. Though the cave itself was simple enough to navigate, the sheer number of vampires, thrall skeletons, and things that reminded me of nothing so much as a Daedric version of a dog, the numbers were simply staggering. Had they not been so spread out, had they been able to concentrate their numbers on me, then I doubt that I would have made it through relatively unscathed. Now, though, seeing this entrance to this crypt, I think that what I've seen is only the tip of an iceberg. This isn't just an artifact, it's an entire construction of vampire make, I think, and the condition screams out that it is older than anything I've yet seen in Skyrim. These aren't just vampires, these are truly ancient and powerful vampires I'm about to play with. And they have centuries, millennia of experience. My first steps into the chamber beyond only convinced me further. We have no idea what we are dealing with. I arrived in time to witness another vigilant being killed, and the sight was not a pleasant one. It did confirm a number of things for me, though. The main speaker was the glacial that was mentioned earlier, and before he killed the vigilant, he made a comment that the vigilant had no idea what it was that they had really found here. Once he was dead, the conversation turned to internal vampire politics, which only reinforced how large a group of vampires is involved. He named at least 2 others who would stand clear of him once he brought back the prize to hearken. The distinct impression of internal power plays in a large organization could not be missed. But what is the prize, then? And where are the rest of this group of vampires housed? And will I live long enough to find any of this out? As it turns out, vampires are just as vulnerable to sunlight enchantments and silver weaponry as other undead creatures. Combined with surprise, I can now report that glacial will not be having anyone stand aside for him anymore. His rivals will have power to gather up, now that glacial is deader than he was before. This leaves me with a mystery, though, for all of their attention was centered on this structure, one clearly more advanced and built far later than the other structures in this place. There is something about the setup, though, that tells me that it might be some kind of elaborate lock, or maybe a cleverly hidden entrance to something more. The central pillar appeared to have a button on it, which seemed the right place to start. I was wary of it, however. Cagran Zell had a similar setup. In a way. Well, enough alike that it made me cautious of some kind of trap. When I couldn't find anything obvious, however, I decided that the only way to find out was to do. A moment later, and I dearly wished I had not. A large spike shot straight up out of the top of the pillar, piercing my hand straight through. The pain was... well, at first I didn't feel any, stunned and in shock at the view of my hand being transfixed by this dark steel spike. And then the pain hit, and it was all I could do to remain upright. The spike retracted, after only a second, but that second felt far longer than it really was. I immediately directed what little healing magic I knew to repair my hand. And when I looked up, the entire structure had altered. Walls of purple fire encircled the center of the platform, with another running along a line in the floor, and then stopping. It took me a moment, but once I realized that the braziers were movable, I quickly understood the actions needed. The floor dropped out again from beneath me, this time creating a set of steps leading back down to the center, where, beneath the original pillar, there was what looked like a large storage container. I pressed a hand to the container, and the door retracted into the floor. What I found inside was not what I was expecting. I had expected, like the vigilance and Isran had mentioned, an artifact of some kind, maybe some lost riches. What I got instead was, well, for all of me, it appeared to be a young woman. She fell to the floor, staggering as if she was just waking up and not entirely ready to be walking. While on the floor, though, I saw what she had slung on her back, and my mouth went dry. I've heard of them. Everyone in Tamriel has, perhaps all of Nirn, but I've never seen one, only heard descriptions. There is, however, nothing else like them, and its presence in this tomb made everything take on an even darker tone than it had before. An Elder Scroll. This woman, whoever she was, had an Elder Scroll casually strapped to her back like it was nothing. Who is she? Why was she locked away in here? What have I just awoken? The short answer is that I've awoken an ancient vampire called Serana. The longer answer is too long for my writings here, so I will summarize and hope I don't miss anything important. First, yes, it is an Elder Scroll. No, she won't tell me why she has it or how she got it. She apologized, actually. How often do you hear of a predator apologizing to its prey? That aside, she claims she has trust issues, especially with her father. An old story, even for her, based on her reaction to her own words. Second, yes, she is far older than she would appear. When we tried to figure out how long she had been locked away, she was stunned to find out that Cyrodiil was the seat of an empire. Indeed, she had no idea that there had even been an empire at all, which makes her... Well, I didn't exactly get a lot of history lessons, but it does mean she predates Talos of Atmora. Look good for her age. Finally, yes, I am stuck with her for the moment. She wants to get to her family home, situated on an island off the northwest coast of Skyrim. Serana believes there will be a boat there that can ferry us to the island. And once she is home, and she can see what's been going on, she'll have a better idea of how to proceed. All of that scares me down to my bones. That, though, wasn't the scariest thing. That honor belongs to a comment she made. If people are after me, there's something bigger going on. I think I know what the prize was that Lokil was looking for. And now I'm taking it home.